All right, let's talk about one of the wildest, most popular, and now almost completely forgotten sports in American history. We're talking about pedestrianism, the sport of walking.
So let me ask you a question. Before baseball became America's pastime, what do you think was the biggest spectator sport? I mean, before the World Series, what were millions of people paying good money to go see? The answer, I promise you, is probably not what you're thinking.
6 days. That was the magic number. The main event for this sport lasted 6 full days. But what on earth could they have been doing for 6 straight days?
That's it. Walking. Not a casual stroll in the park either. We're talking about nonstop, competitive walking around a track, trying to cover the most ground. And for a while, it was, without a doubt, the biggest show in town. You see, back in the 1870s and 80s, this wasn't some niche hobby. Pedestrianism was the absolute pinnacle of athletic entertainment. We're talking international sports celebrities, huge cash prizes, and millions of people totally captivated by these unbelievable feats of human endurance.
So try to picture the scene. Forget quiet, polite stadiums. Imagine a place like Madison Square Garden, but it's crammed with thousands and thousands of screaming fans. The air is so thick with cigar smoke you can barely see. You can hear the constant roar of the crowd placing bets. And to top it all off, a brass band is just blasting music 24/7 to keep everyone awake. It was part marathon, part circus, and part week-long nonstop party.
Okay, so how did this whole crazy thing actually work? Let's break down the rules of the track.
The main goal was, deceptively simple. Just walk farther than everybody else. The competitors would just circle a small dirt track inside one of these arenas, and whoever logged the most miles by the end of the 6 days was crowned the champion. And they were very specific about the timing. You might be wondering, why 6 days exactly? Well, it was because of strict Victorian-era Sabbath laws. No public entertainment on Sundays, so these races would kick off at the very first minute of Monday morning and end at the very last second of Saturday night. No exceptions. Now, the goal these athletes were chasing was just insane. The magic number, the kind of Mount Everest of this sport, was 500 miles. To even get close to that, you had to average over 80 miles a day, every single day, with almost no time for sleep. And a sport this huge is bound to create its own superstars. And it did. These walkers weren't just athletes, they were international celebrities. They were the rock stars of their day. You had these huge personalities, right? Like Edward Payson Weston, who was this flamboyant American pioneer of the sport. The crowd loved him. And of course, every hero needs a rival. For Weston, that was Daniel O'Leary, an Irish-American. Their head-to-head races drew these massive, fiercely divided crowds. Then there was Charles Rowell from England, who came to New York and won a mind-boggling prize. And it wasn't just a men's club either. Women like Ada Anderson were enormous stars in their own right, proving they could push their bodies to the exact same incredible limits. And speaking of that prize money, what are we talking about here? Well, that $50,000 prize that Charles Rowell won, in today's money, that's over $1.5 million. So yeah, this was way more than just bragging rights. This was big, big business.
But okay, behind all the fame and all the money, there was a brutal, almost unbelievable physical reality. The toll this sport took on the human body was just immense.
I'm not even exaggerating. If you read eyewitness accounts, they describe the leader days of a race as something out of a horror film. You had walkers who were so exhausted they were just staggering, limping, even collapsing right there on the track. Their bodies were literally breaking down in front of a paying audience. So how on earth did they keep going? Well, this was long before sports science, so their idea of fuel was terrifying. Trainers would be feeding them this bizarre mix of beef tea and raw eggs, but they also gave them tons of champagne and, get this, in some cases, small doses of strychnine. Yeah, a highly toxic poison used as a stimulant. As you can imagine, the extreme sleep deprivation led to some wild hallucinations. Walkers would start seeing things that weren't there, yelling at people who didn't exist, or suddenly dodging imaginary obstacles on the track. And the morbidly curious part? The crowds loved it. The audience would actually swell in the final days of the race just to see how far the human mind and body could be pushed before they just completely broke. So, the big question is, if this sport was so massive, huge crowds, big stars, incredible drama, where did it all go?
why have most of us never even heard of it?
Well, the downfall of pedestrianism wasn't some big scandal or a lack of interest. It was much simpler than that. It was made obsolete by a new machine, a new technology that was about to change entertainment forever. And that invention was the safety bicycle. You see, promoters very quickly realized that while watching someone walk for 6 days is grueling, watching someone bike for 6 days is faster, it's more dangerous, and frankly, for an audience, it's a whole lot more exciting. The crowds just moved on. They went from the walking track to the cycling velodrome. And just like that, pedestrianism pretty much faded into history. But its legacy isn't totally gone. That same spirit, that same drive to push the body to its absolute limit, well, it lives on today in modern ultramarathoners and all kinds of other extreme endurance athletes. Which kind of leaves us with one final thought. The biggest sport in America was completely replaced by a new piece of technology and was pretty much forgotten within a single generation. It just makes you wonder, what are we all obsessed with today that people 100 years from now won't have even heard of?